Good morning, everyone. I'm Ed Weston, and along with my colleague, Matt Lonkar, Manufacturing Works, welcomes you to today's technology program. The topic is automating business processes in your plant. I know this is an exciting opportunity for you. This format this morning is an exciting opportunity for us. It's the first time we have attempted a training session that's both in person and virtual. So we'll see how it goes. Today's program is part of a series funded by a generous grant from the Cleveland Foundation, who believes that local manufacturers can thrive if they will evaluate and consider investing in new technologies to increase their growth. Another sponsor of today's program is Team Neo, and representing Team Neo this morning is its Senior Director of Industry and Innovation, Rick Earls. Rick? Can we unmute Rick?
Where is Rick? There he is.
Right there.
Is he might be muted. Rick, are you there?
All right. Now?
There we go. Much better. Thank you.
All right.
Rick, take it away.
All right. Thank you. So let me just say a few things about Team Neo and even the Smart Manufacturing Cluster and some of the services we provide. And of course, it falls in line with exactly what Manufacturing Works is doing here, try to promote the improvements in business for each one of the manufacturers in their plants. Team Neo is a private, nonprofit economic development organization accelerating business growth and job creation throughout the 18 counties of the Northeast Ohio region. As the designated Jobs Ohio network partner, we align and amplify local economic development efforts in the region's 18 counties. We conduct research and data analysis to inform local conversations, and we influence solutions. We market the Northeast Ohio region, and we work to increase access to jobs, education, and training for the region's 4.3 million people. We do this to build a more vibrant regional economy, one that's more talented, equitable, competitive, innovative, resilient, and prosperous. Now, in my role at Team Neo, I spend most of my time with the activities of this Smart Manufacturing Cluster. So the Smart Manufacturing Cluster of Northeast Ohio accelerates the growth and competitiveness of the region economy through the implementation of smart manufacturing and innovation that leverages the region's rich manufacturing heritage, unique assets and talented workforce. We lead the development of innovation roadmaps and serve as the platform for the region's manufacturing blueprint to accelerate the adoption and maximize the value of technology. We connect knowledge, experience tools, and networks with manufacturers to generate demand, increase productivity, spur product innovation, and develop the talent and resources necessary to drive technology implementation and innovation. Now, as a manufacturer interested in implementing smart manufacturing into their operations, the cluster can help in the process, which begins with a data-driven readiness assessment that is available on the Smart Manufacturing website. Once the quick survey is taken, the cluster can then provide assistance in the manufacturer's understanding of the basic concepts, help them identify opportunities for pilot projects, introduce them to solution providers and subject matter experts, help find training services, help with employment services, and then help find potential programs for financial assistance. Now, one can take the DDM readiness assessments on their own, or someone from the cluster can walk them through those questions personally. Either way, the cluster will follow up to the manufacturer's response to make sure they get all the help they need from all the regional development partners to begin their digital transformation journey. And again, if you need it, contact us. All the information is in this presentation. Don't hesitate to get a hold of us. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you, Rick. So the goal of this morning's program is to help you to evaluate how doable writing a custom business app is for your company. And hopefully this morning, you'll not only determine that, but you will come away with your first app that maybe you can plug into the lobby somehow, and it can serve as a training tool for people that are not part of this program today. To help you on this journey, we have found what we believe is Northeast Ohio's best Microsoft Power Platform trainer. And let's get to work, and I'll introduce to you Avenir's Manager of Application Development, Doug Ponchak. Doug?
Thank you, Ed. Rick, you really hit the nail on the head there. So what you said is exactly what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about technology, tools, and knowledge. And how do we combine those three things into something that's useful, something that's helpful, and something that kind of makes your guys' jobs a little easier. One of the things that we're going to be doing in this is we're going to be creating a visitor log. Now, this is just a very simple, quote unquote, application, but it's just the basis for what you can do with these tools that we're going to be showing. So, you know, some of the preliminary discussions, and I'm going to kind of gloss through some terms and some questions and some things to think about as you're doing some of these applications, and some of the things that we've learned over the years of actually doing them. You know, what are the Power Platform of products, and what is SharePoint? So, you know, the Power Platform of products in Microsoft is Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and SharePoint. SharePoint kind of sits as a backbone, kind of as a back-end tool that, and specifically the latest version of SharePoint, which is SharePoint Online. So it's a web-based collaboration system that allows companies to have a centrally managed document management system. It uses Microsoft's Office 365 for login authentication, so everything is secured. Microsoft spends over $1 billion with a B just on security and authentication every year. So it's definitely secured via a username and password. And since 2004, SharePoint has really come a long way in, you know, enabling companies and people to have not just a web presence, but a document collaboration system, and just a great way to centralize a lot of the processes that you do. But SharePoint is not just document storage. It shouldn't just be thought of as like a file system. Thinking of SharePoint like a file system is kind of using your car to get your mail at the end of your driveway. It is a perfectly practical application of a car. You pull it out of the garage, you drive down the driveway, you get your mail, you back it up. It's perfectly suitable for doing that. But a car has so many more features and functionality on it that you can do with it. So maximizing what you can do with the tools that you have available is also important. So, and SharePoint and Microsoft tools aren't really the only ones out there. You know, you guys might have certain things in your own, in the manufacturing world. There might be tools and applications that you guys have that might do something similar. This is just one option that you have for taking all the tools that, if you buy a Microsoft subscription, again, taking advantage of all the tools that you have in that toolbox and not just, you know, one or two things. Yeah, depending on the Microsoft. So the question is, do you have access to all of the Power Platform of products that I mentioned? And it really depends on what licensing that you have. So the business standard license is the lowest level, but you can get business standard, you can get business premium, you can get any of the enterprise licenses, which include like the E1, the E3 licensing. So there are license requirements when you're wanting to get these, but the business standard we found was the least expensive option to be able to have the Power Apps, Power Automate, and SharePoint available. So where do I begin? So, what things do I need to think about before you even start opening up a computer? The design process. You need to have a blueprint for your house before you build it. You don't just start hammering nails and building the house before you have a blueprint. So understanding what this thing needs to be, talking to people. Who are the end users going to be that are going to be using this? What do they need? What's that end user experience going to be for them? Making sure that you get that end user perspective in mind and understanding what that end result's going to be before you even start doing this. And then the number one question that you need to ask yourself is, does this need the Power Platform of products? Is this something that could just be done with a simple SQL database? Is this something that could be done internally that doesn't really need a lot of user interaction? Does it really need all these bells and whistles? So asking those questions and making sure that those questions are answered and answered thoughtfully and getting feedback from other people is always important. So there's also some graduated examples that I'm going to show. So there's levels of Power Apps, and there's levels of taking advantage of these things. So this is a simple Power App. This is one. Yes. Sure.
So you have to have you can use Power Tools without
Yes. So the question is, do you have to have the licensing? Can you purchase the tools separately through Microsoft? And the answer is yes. So you either through the business standard or the business premium or one of the other tools, or you can also purchase them a la carte through the Microsoft licensing, however you go about buying those. But yes, and I will repeat the question if there are any. So this is we'll call this a simple, like a level 1 application. This is going to be something that you're going to have, at the end of this. This is going to be something, so it's not quite as many fields, but it's a simple form. It has labels, it has little fields that you can fill out, and it has a nicer presentation layer than just what you would get out of the box, and we will also go through that. So there's also a level 2. So this is taking that original one and kind of adding some formatting, adding some text around it, adding the headers and things like that to it, and maybe having a little bit more of drop-down examples. Picking the fields is important, because if you are doing any kind of reporting or any filtering or anything else after the fact, if you ask what someone's favorite color is, and they put in red, and they put it in all caps, if someone else puts it in all lowercase, that could mess up the filtering and the formatting because of the case sensitivity. So giving people the option, if it's a finite list of things, using drop downs and things like that. But again, that's all part of the user interaction. And then level 3. So this one here might be a little bit of a nitro. I tried to get the whole thing in. So this is actually a capital request and a capital expenditure application that we wrote for a company. So this goes through from the request to the approval, all the way through the entire process, all the rules, all the requirements, all the required fields, going through multiple levels of approvals based on fields on the form. What is the total being requested? If it's $1 million, and it has to go through these additional 4 people. So there's a lot of things that happen in the background of this one, but the level of the application and of what you're building won't be something like this, of course, now, but this is where you can get to once you start getting used to the tools. And it's just a matter of opening it up and trying things. Google's going to be your best friend. When you're doing a lot of these things, a lot of people have probably done most of the things that you guys are looking to do. So you just prefix it with Power Apps and away you go. Googling is a skill, I've realized also. Soft skill, but a skill nonetheless. All right, so without further ado, what we are going to do now is we're going to kind of move into the actual application and move into actually doing some of this stuff. So what I have here is I have a list of user accounts. So if you don't have a tenant, if you don't have your own SharePoint environment, if you don't have your own Power Apps and Power Automate environment, you can take advantage of my dev tenant and build everything in there that we're doing. I've given. All right, so we will continue here. So what I'm going to do is there's a URL at the top of this list. It's dougpunchak-admin.sharepoint.com. So if everybody would go there. We good? Wonderful. Okay. All's well and good in login land. So we will continue with this. So now what we're going to do is on the left-hand side here, you're going to see the little sites drop down. So if you expand sites and you expand and you click on active sites, this is, again, this is the SharePoint Admin Center. So this is where the administrators can go to create sites, to delete sites, to do all those administrative type things. But what I'd like all of you to do is once you click on that active sites, it should load with this list. I want you to go ahead and click the create button up here. So once you click create, it's then going to prompt you to pick which type of site. So in this case, we're just going to pick a communication site. Everyone's good? Okay. So once you click on communication site, it's then going to ask you what you want to call this. It doesn't matter. You can call this your name. You can call this your company. You can call this whatever you want to name it. You can call it test 456. This really doesn't matter. The site name can always be changed later in SharePoint. Your site owner will be you. So whatever user account that you logged in with, whether it's one of the dev accounts that I provided or your own account. I'll call mine Manufacturing Works Demo. Now you see, as I'm typing this, it's automatically going to anticipate what the URL address is going to be. So you can name this, again, whatever you want. You don't have to choose the one that they suggest, but it's just, again, a suggestion. The site owner, in my case, is going to be admin, and then it's going to find you. It's going to actually find the account that you're signed in with, and then just click on that account. Now, this is all you really need to do. You can go into the advanced settings. You can pick, whether you want specific sensitivity, time zones, all this other stuff, but we don't have to worry about anything like this in this case. And then click finish. So once you click finish, it's actually going to start to create this account. They are all sorted by name. So if you want to, you can scroll to the right and sort them by date created. That way all the ones that we're creating now will be at the top, easier to find. So once you create your site, then all you want to do is click on the URL itself. If you click on the name, that'll open up the property so you can go and start changing things about the site from the admin side. But to actually get to the site, click on the URL. And then in a new window, your site will open. So you are now a SharePoint administrator. Congratulations, you can put that on your resume. You can create a new SharePoint site. So now we have a site, and it starts off with a great template. We're not going to get into the branding and changing the home pages and things like that, but you have a perfectly ready SharePoint site to start adding documents, adding content, giving security, and all the other things that come along with creating a SharePoint site. Yes, like a new drive that you stand up, like a new home drive. So each one of these sites can be considered a drive where you're getting ready to start adding files, adding folders. But in this case, we are going to create a new storage area, a new area to store content. So if you click on new from the drop down up here at the top, and then click on list. So there are also a ton of different types of things that you can create. You can create a contacts list, you can create a links list, you can create a document library, or just a normal list like we're going to do here. So high level, a document library and a list. What the heck's the difference? So you can think of a list like an email. You have your subject, you have your body, and you can have one or more attachments to it. Doesn't have to, but you can. And you can also have multiples. A document library starts with the file. So that's more like the document storage area that you're used to on like the file system would be a document library, but this we're going to be expanding on that normal file system. So in this case, we're going to pick a blank list. And again, call it whatever you want. This is your site. No one else has access to it at this point. You can call it whatever you like. I'm going to call this one visitor demo. So, and you have other options here. You can show it in the site navigation, which is the left navigation. But in this case, I'm just going to leave the defaults and I'm going to hit create. Then it's going to take you to this list. And the only thing that's going to be here is a title field. Now, this title field is always going to be there and it can't be deleted. So we have to think about when you're working with SharePoint, what we're going to use this title field for. It could be the title of a book if you're creating a list of books that you've read. It could be the title of a person, but we can also change the name of this, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to edit an existing column in this before we start creating new ones. So in this case, I'm going to click on title.
Hey, Doug, I missed how you got to this.
Sure, yeah, up in the site contents.
Site contents, yep, I have that list of files.
Yep, and then in the upper left where it says create.
Let
Let me get back to it with you.
don't see create.
Or new, sorry. There's a new drop down in the upper left underneath the little icon.
Yep.
And then click on list. And then it'll prompt you to create a blank list. Well, it'll prompt you for something. Just click on blank list and then give that list a name.
All right, gotcha.
And then once you click on OK, when you're creating that blank list, it'll then take you to here.
All right.
So right now what we're doing is we're building the place where all of the information is going to be stored. All of the visitors that are going to be coming. This is the Excel sheet, essentially, if you want to think of it like that, where all of these are going to be stored. It's just a web-based Excel sheet, kind of. And this title field is, again, something we need to figure out what we're going to use it for. And in this case, we're going to change this field to rename it something else. So if I click on the little drop down next to title, I go to column settings, and I click on rename. And I'm going to change this to company. So I click on company, or I type company, and then I click save. Now I have a practical use for this, for what I'm going to be doing. Now we have to create the other fields. You know, where's who the person is that's arriving? What company are they from? When did they arrive? When did they leave? So there's other fields that we're now going to have to create in this list in order to make it functional. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create the arrived column. So what date and time that the person arrived. So if you click on the add column heading and select the date and time option. So again, these are all the different types of columns that we can create. A single line of text, which we will be creating, a multiple line of text, which can give you the bolding, the underlining, some of the rich formatting, a number. So if you want to make sure that people don't type text into this thing, if you want a dollar amount, if you want something like that, you can kind of filter it and make sure that people only type certain things in there. If you pick number, for example, you can set limits. It has to be greater than 0 and less than 100. It has to be greater than -20, you know, based on whatever, you know, the manufacturing specs that you have. So you can create multiple types of fields. But in this case, we're going to be creating the date and time. Then a little panel opens up on the right-hand side, and I'm going to call this one arrived. This is really the only required field, and you'll see that it's required based on the little asterisk next to the name. Description is not required, the type, but we do want to include the time. So hit the little toggle for time. Friendly format, this is Microsoft's attempt at being quote unquote friendly. They'll say things like yesterday, a few minutes ago, a few seconds ago. I hate that. if I'm picking a time, darn it, I want to know the date and time that you got there, not yesterday. So I don't like the friendly format. And because this is going to be an arrive time, chances are they're arriving right now. So you can preload this field with today's date. That way it just kind of gives them one less click, one less thing that the user has to do. So we'll pick today's date. Yes. So well, this is to select a date and time. So it's actually going to prompt you to select what date and time that you want, or it's just going to leave it completely blank. So in this case, I'm going to say today's date. And again, there are more options here that are available. You can require that this column contain information. Obviously, that's probably a good thing to have. But again, for the sake of time now, we're just going to leave it at this and then say save. Now we have our arrived column. That's all there is to it. If I were to hit new at this point, I now have my company. I now have my arrived, and it preloaded with right now. So I could say that who's here? Great. Avenir's here at this time. But who is it? Who am I? Who is this person that arrived? Who am I visiting also? This really doesn't tell us enough information. So I'm going to delete this to keep everything consistent with everybody else. And what we're going to do now is we're going to create the rest of the fields. So the next one that we're going to create is the your name field. So who is the person who's arriving? So I'm going to say add a column. Because there's no pre-fill for this, because it could be Bob, it could be William, it could be Robert, it could be, who knows who it is. I'm going to say single line of text. And this one here, I'm going to call it your name. And of course, we can't have a default value, but again, you can require that this column contains information. You can go through all of these, but again, for the sake of time and expediency, I'm just going to create your name. And we're going to create two more columns. We're going to create the departure, so when you left, and who you're here to see. So I'm going to add those columns now. So my departure is going to be also a date and time. Very similar to the one that we just created because we want to include the time. And we don't want to default this because we don't know when they're going to be leaving. So we don't want it to default to right now, so that when they create it, it's going to say that they arrived and left at the same time. So we want to leave none for this one. And save. And then finally, who you're here to see. Because this is going to be part of the notification process when these people get here. So this one is actually going to be a person. So who within the company that you're now visiting, who are you going to go see? And it's just going to be a person or group. We don't want them to be able to pick groups. And again, there's a ton of other options that you can have. And you can pick multiple people. So you can say that you're going to be visiting multiple people, but in this case, again, we're just going to be keeping this simple for right now. And say save. So now we have all of the fields that we technically need. And you can add others. You can add a comments. You can add a how was your visit. You can add all these other things that you want to do. But for the sake of this, these 5 fields are the major necessary fields that we have. So when you're done, your field your form should look something like this. And if it doesn't, put it in the chat. Let us know, and we will help you out. If no one heard, this is going to be connected to the organizational structure within your Active Directory environment. All the users are going to be available. So when you pick the person, you'll see later on, you'll be able to see the display name, but in the background, it's going to grab their email address. It's going to grab their title. It can grab all the other information that is associated with that person. And plus with this, as you'll see in a minute, you'll be able to create a much more nicer presentation layer, a little bit of a UI around this, the assign-in form, as opposed to Excel, which is just rows and columns. But this right here, you are absolutely correct, is rows and columns, but there's more that we can do to it after this. Absolutely. So one of the things is, well, this order makes absolutely no sense. I created these in the wrong order. Well, SharePoint gives you the ability to move these things around. So I can actually click on your name, click and hold it and drag it, and I can move this to be the first column. Now that's not going to change the form that's on the back side of this thing. That's just going to change this view of this information. But say that I accidentally made I either named this wrong or I picked the wrong type or something like that. If you need to edit any of these columns, this gear icon up in the upper right-hand corner is going to be your best friend, because as an administrator, this gear icon is kind of the window to the world of everything on the back side of this. So if I were to click on this, and there's a list settings option. So because I'm in a list, Microsoft is smart enough to only give you options that are associated with a list. If I was on the home page, I wouldn't see list settings because it doesn't make sense. But so SharePoint and Microsoft in general is very context aware. You'll know this, if you're in Office or something like that, and you're doing something, all of a sudden something's grayed out up in the ribbon. You're like, well, why can't I do this? Oh, because I have to click on this first. Then that option, is available to me. But if I click on the list settings, I now see all of the back end information. This is kind of pulling the curtain back from Oz a little bit, but you see all of your columns are here now that you can go in and you can make some changes. If I wanted to require the departure, if I accidentally didn't do that the first time, I can come in here and then I can toggle this back to yes. Of course, the departure we would want to, because that has to be empty at first. Or if you just completely, mess something up, you can delete the entire column from the list. SharePoint also has this nice little breadcrumb at the top too. So I'm in the settings, I can go back to visitor demo, and then now I'm here. So that's all well and good. So, and again, this is a perfectly functional, perfectly usable form for a visitor list. You can use this right now. But it's ugly. It's functional at best. But we want to make this a little bit more pretty. We want to spice this thing up a little bit. So that's where the Power Apps part of thing comes into play. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add Power Apps on top of SharePoint. And we'll do that by clicking on the Integrate option from the top, going to Power Apps, and then clicking on Customize Forms. So again, Integrate, Power Apps, Customize Forms. It may prompt you for login again if you didn't check the box to say, remember me and save my credentials and all that other stuff. It may re-prompt you for authentication, but in this case, it's just going to log in. But now what it's doing in the background is it's building us a form. So it's going in and it's from that SharePoint list, it's taking all the fields that we've created and it's adding them now to a blank the Power Apps form. And it takes a minute to build this whole thing, but it'll get there eventually. So there we go. Again, functional at best, but now is where the visual magic can start, the making this a very much nicer presentation part of things. So what we're going to do first is I like to make things bigger. I like to give myself the maximum real estate that I can. And this is suitable for mobile. Power Apps is 100% mobile friendly as long as you pick the portrait view. But what we're going to do is we're going to make this thing bigger. So if you click on the File tab up in the upper left, and then go to Settings. And in here, we're going to click on display. So now we have the display settings for this Power App form. And I'm going to pick landscape and then apply. And you can make it a small landscape. You can keep the same aspect ratio where it's more rectangular, but I'm going to make this thing large. I want this thing to be as big as I can get it for, all the ACA compliant and all those other things that some of you may or may not be falling under. Bigger is better when you're talking about the visually impaired and all those other things that you may have to take into consideration. So once you're done with that, you should have now a much larger scale canvas that you're working on. And I'll give it, and we're back in business. Okay, so to get to Power Apps again, so I'm going to go back to my list. So from my list, there's the integrate, Power Apps, and then customize forms.
You just created an app, create something versus us.
Correct. Yeah, it's just going to take all the fields. Like if we had 30 fields in here, and we did this, it's going to drop and dump all 30 fields onto that. And I'm going to show you how you can remove some fields and rearrange some of these fields just to get that nicer presentation on these things, coloring, formatting. Is he good? Perfect.
Okay, then probably go back to
Yep.
show how to do the file search.
Yep. So once we're here, to make this bigger again, you go to File in the upper left, click on Settings in the left nav, select Display, and then change the orientation to Landscape. And I'll give a couple seconds for you to do that. So File, Settings, Display, and then Landscape. Okay, it says it's admitting you. Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, so we're now in landscape mode. We now have all of our fields now arranged on a much larger canvas. And now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say, well, we really don't need this attachments field because, people who are coming to here, they're not, I guess they could, but then they'd have to have a USB thing and drop it in there. That's what they'll do after they get to the person that they're meeting. So for the visitors list, we don't need this attachments. I just select it once. And everything in Power Apps is a card. So it's a card that has multiple fields associated with it. So this one here has a label and has this attachments field. But if you just select it once and hit the delete key, gone. Now you just opened up more real estate too for the rest of this. So the next thing that we want to do is, everything is still pretty linear. It's just field, one column, multiple rows, and that's not how a form usually works. So the next thing that we want to do is on the right-hand side in this thing, this is where we start to get into the formatting. So this is all going to be personal preference. It's all going to be, my design, I've been told that my stick figures are crooked sometimes, so I can't do color palettes. I leave that all to my wife and stuff. So she's the designer from my standpoint. But yeah, I at least know that this top-down linear approach is just not the right way to have a form. But so I'm going to change this to 2 columns. And you can change it to 3, you can change it to 4, and it's just going to kind of squish them all around, but we can still rearrange them after the fact. But in this example, again, I'm going to select 2, and it's going to automatically rearrange this to the 2 columns. So now I have a nice presentation form, a lot of empty white space, and 2 columns for everything here. So now what we're going to do next is, now we're going to make this thing a little bit more readable. We're going to add some color. We're going to add some more information to this. But one thing that you're going to notice, and I'm going to close down this fields panel because it's just kind of taking up space. So to close that down, you hit the little X on the fields, not the one on the far right with the arrow. Make sure you're hitting the one with the X with the fields. And again, that just kind of opens up our area to work here. One thing you'll notice though is this still says title. Remember, this was the one that we changed to company. Microsoft is going to remember what it calls the canonical name, the name it used to be, the name it originally was. So it's not going to remember the new display name. So what we have to do is we have to now change this manually in Power Apps. So as you see when I hover over it, it says double click to edit text. Okay, thank you. Double click to edit text. So now I have my cursor here, and once I double clicked, it was able to give it. It's now all highlighted for me to be able to start typing something. So I would technically start typing company here, right? I type company, and then I click off of it. Hitting enter will probably generate a new line, but so now I've renamed that specific field in that card to company. No? Likes you better than me. So one of the people here in person, the field was already named company for them. Not sure why that would have been, but in my case, I had to change it. In his case, he had to. It already came over. So yours also came over. Okay, so maybe mine's the anomaly. Was it? Okay. So it's random. Welcome to Microsoft. Sometimes things work the way that you think they do. Sometimes they work another way. But again, this is a good instance of showing that you can just change these field names after the fact. So let's see. So now what we're going to do is we can change the colors of these things. So we can change the colors, we can change the positions, we can change all of these other things within this. So, but what I want to do first is this company, I want to try to get the arrived and departure next to each other. I want the your name to be first. I want the company to be second. I want to order this thing logically in how somebody would fill out the form. So I'm going to take the your name card and I'm going to click on it once and then select the black heading of the card and just kind of drag it up, holding down the left mouse and dragging it up into the upper left-hand corner, and you'll see that it creates that little gray rectangle up next to company. If I let go of it there, it's now going to put your name up here where company was, and it shifted everything else to the right. So now this is kind of getting there. So the next thing I can do is, I can take the person visiting and I can move that around. I can move company around. I can make the arrived and departure. I like them next to each other like this personally. This kind of makes sense to me. But but we still have all this white space down here. There's a lot of empty space. So this is where we, where we can start increasing the font sizes, giving this thing more color. So if I select this one, the Your Name card again, and I click one more time on the Your Name field, on the right-hand side, you'll see that I now have all of my formatting options. I can bold. Right now it's called semi-bold, but I can make it a full bold, and I can change the font size. So if I wanted to make this a 14-point font, I can. I type 14, I hit enter, and then it makes the Your Name field 14-point font. You can do the alignment. You can, all these things are things that you can play with. If you like a specific font, you're more than welcome to play with these settings. But in this case, I'm just going to, and there unfortunately isn't a way to just select them all and make them all the same. But in this case, I'm just going to select now the field below it and make that the same. So I'm going to make that 14-point font as well, but not bold. And then I'm going to do that for the rest of these. So company, heading, 14-point font, company fill-in field, 14-point font. Oh, but I need to make the company heading bold, because that's what I did with the other one. So take a minute now, and you can play with these settings, make them bigger, make them smaller, make them semi-bold, underline them, just to kind of get the feeling for the options that you have. And again, I'm just going to make mine all 14-point font, bold headings, and normal sized fields. And some of these, you'll see that there are other options up here at the top. Like when I click on the person visiting drop down, there's other things that this is dependent on, because this is a person lookup. It's not just a free text field. It's not just a date field. So there is things. So some of the features and the formatting functionality is moved all the way down here to the bottom. And in Microsoft's infinite wisdom, they made all of these separate. So again, I'm just going to kind of make all of these the same 14-point font. That way everything's consistent. That is one thing I do know. Consistency is key. Okay, and my last one here. So while you guys are doing that, so just to kind of, again, pull the curtain behind the Power Apps Oz here, this again is a card, and a card has properties. So you know how a pipe has properties. It has a radius, it has a diameter, it has what the metallurgical content of it is. It has all those things, whether it's threaded, whether it's not. So there's a lot of properties with this thing. And all those properties are not only on the right-hand side, but some of them can actually be in this little drop-down. One of the things I want to show you, and this is for future reference, is this visible property. So visible means whether it's shown or not. And in the example that I was showing earlier, where we had the capital expenditure, there's a lot of fields that are not part of that initial form. So based on a status, based on another field on this form, whether it's in a draft, whether it's submitted, whether it's waiting for the director of operations, whether it's waiting for the CEO, there's other fields on that form that could be hidden or shown based on the status or based on where that form is in the process. And that visible field is what drives that one. The visible field right now is either true or false. If I say, right now it's true, if I call it false, it's away. and it just disappears, literally disappears. But I can always get it back. Yeah, I can always see it on my left in this left-hand panel here. I always have access to it there, even if it is hidden. But you know, we don't want to make that one go away.
So yeah, some of there's a lot that you can do with Power Apps in terms of the showing, the hiding, the formatting, even conditional field, what's the word I'm groveling for? Like a dependent drop down where you pick a state, and then this one here fills in with all the states from just that state. Yeah, so you can have you know, that level of granularity and feature functionality within here. But for right now, I'm just going to leave this like this, and now I'm going to publish. Publishing is your way of getting this thing back to SharePoint. So I already have my SharePoint open here in another tab, but if you see this back, don't click it yet. If you see this back to SharePoint, this will actually take this window and open up SharePoint. Don't do that because we want to leave this one open. If you right click on back to SharePoint and say open in a new tab, that'll then just create a new tab that will open up SharePoint, but it'll still keep your Power App window open. So now I'm back to the visitor. So what I wanted to show you is when I click new here, before I publish or before I do anything, again, this is our very functional list that we have. So back on the Power App, to publish this. So now I want to send this to SharePoint. I want this to be my new form. I would go to File, Save, and you can put a note about this. These notes are kind of cool too. I'll show you why. I'm going to just call this initial version and then save. So now it's saved it, but now I need to publish it to SharePoint because you can save it as a draft.
Are we supposed to be doing this? Are we supposed to be doing
please.
the same thing?
Yes, please. Because this will actually send the form that you've created, with all the formatting that we've done, changing the fonts and then sizes and stuff. This will actually now send this over to the SharePoint form.
Then you just flew through that and I missed how to do that.
No worries. So I will just make a small incremental change here just so it sees that I did something. So it gives me my save button back. I'll make this one here 15. So to publish, we'll go to the File tab in the upper left. We can add our note. And again, these notes are optional, but you'll see why they're helpful in a minute. And then click Save. So this is just saving it inside Power Apps. It hasn't done anything with SharePoint yet. And once you save, you'll see it published to SharePoint. But you also see all versions. We'll get back to that. So I say publish to SharePoint, and it's going to say, just so you know, what you're doing is going to make this thing available to anybody now that goes to that list. And we say, yep, that's exactly what we want to do. This can take up to a couple minutes for it to actually propagate down to the list. So if you don't see it right away, that's okay. But there's this see all versions. So you guys don't have to do this. You can just watch with this one. See all versions. We'll get back to that. So I say publish to SharePoint, and it's going to say, just so you know, what you're doing is going to make this thing available to anybody now that goes to that list. And we say, yep, that's exactly what we want to do. This can take up to a couple minutes for it to actually propagate down to the list. So if you don't see it right away, that's okay. But there's this see all versions. So you guys don't have to do this. You can just watch with this. You published it. Everything was working great. You published it. You published it to a SharePoint, and it just bombed. You can come in here and you can. This is your saving undo button in Power Apps. So I can restore this version, and it'll just revert back to this one. It won't make version 2 and delete version 3. It'll create a version 4 that's a mirror of version 2. So it'll just kind of stack them on top of each other. So once you're in the list, I've had to do a refresh, and sometimes you have to do a hard refresh because you have the cached version of SharePoint because it kind of remembers what it used to look like. So if you press Control and F5, that does a forget everything you thought about this page and give me a brand new version. So Control plus F5 will do that refresh. Now if I hit new here, it may still be propagating. There we go. Again, it can take a couple minutes, but
You'll actually see anything different.
correct. That's a good point. So you won't see anything different until you click new or until you click edit of an existing item. So if you had a record out there and you went to edit it, it would then put it into this format. If you hit new, it'll open it up in this new format for you.
If you see no format, right?
Correct. True. or do that full cache refresh. So yeah, if you don't see it yet, after you do the publish, if you hit the publish button and then you confirm the publish, if you don't see it yet, again, either press Control F5 to do that full refresh. Again, sometimes it takes a couple times. But eventually when you hit new, it should pop up with the form that you've built, as long as it's been saved, published, and that refresh. Anybody having any problems on the line? And then you confirm the publish. If you don't see it yet, again, either press Control F5 to do that full refresh. Again, sometimes it takes a couple times. But eventually when you hit new, it should pop up with the form that you've built, as long as it's been saved, published, and that refresh. Anybody having any problems on the line?
Yeah, when I hit new, it's like a whole starting over template.
So back in the SharePoint list, if I now click on the person visiting, it's now going to say, all right, start typing something. So if I start typing, I think I have a couple of these up here. Yeah. So if I start typing my last name, it's going to come up and I think the minimum is 3. Yeah. So you have to have at least 3 letters before it's going to start filtering the results back. So in here, I can see, there's all these people who have somewhere in their name is a PUN. So I can put CHA. Now it's not going to find that. Okay, why? Well, because this is a prefix search, which means it's going to be starts with. So I can still do like DOU, and it'll find all these, or I can put PUN, and it'll find all those, but it's not going to do wildcard searches between the strings. It's just the start of letters. I mean, theoretically, you're not going to type the middle, the 3 characters of somebody's name anyways, but, so they've minimized that functionality and didn't add that in there. But now I'm limited, and this is exactly what we want, to what I can pick from this, because I want to pick somebody in the company. I don't want to put somebody's Gmail address in here. Yes, I'm visiting them, but I don't want to put their Gmail address because this is actually going to send them an email. Power Apps uses what's called Azure Active Directory. So all of your accounts are actually created either in the cloud, in Microsoft's cloud, or they're created in your local AD, which everyone probably has a local AD that is synchronized with the cloud Active Directory. So one of those 2 ways of getting your users either, again, created in the cloud or created on-prem and then synchronized to the cloud, that's where all these users will end up coming from.
So when you pick a person, I feel like pick one out.
Correct. It knows that the question is, how does it know to pick people? Well, because we told it to when we created that column. When we were creating the column, we told it that it was going to be a person or group column, but we excluded groups. That was one of the toggles in there. So we just want people in this result, in this filtering. So yeah, so now it'll filter by just the people that are in this list. So again, now we have a fully functional, little bit better presentation. So if I start typing here, and when I arrived, it's going to give me a nice little calendar here. And I pick my AM and PMs. Of course, this is again going into a little bit more. If you get into the advanced functionality and things like that, we can start doing AM and PM and having all of this, work its way through. But right now it's 11:30, so I arrived at 11:30, and my departure not there yet. But the person I'm visiting will visit my daughter. So and save. So I filled everything out. Great. I'm now logged in. Perfect. I'm going to sit in the lobby for a while because no one knows I'm here. So one of the things that we're going to be doing here is we're going to be hooking up the automation process. So the Power Automate side of things. And it does exactly what it says. It automates manual processes. Going back to I've done a quarterly review process, annual review processes, the capital expense processes, the COVID sign-ins, way back when that was a thing. We actually had a COVID sign-in here that you would have to type in your temperature. Did you have any contact with anybody who's been tested positive? Yes, no, all those other things. And what that would do, and we'll go into this a little bit, is the Power Automate process. When you save this, it's going to flag and trigger a process, a workflow on the backside of this. That's going to go through and say, in this case, it would say, who's the person that you're visiting? Give me their email address, send them an email, and done. And that's a very simple, methodical way of doing this, but it's repeatable. It's automated. You don't have to tell a receptionist. The receptionist walks back and goes and gets the person and walks them back up. This is automated, right? So with the COVID sign-in, what you're able to do is you're able to say if their temperature is 100.3 or above, send HR an email saying there's a person in your lobby who has a fever, or whatever that. If they answered yes to any of the contact tracing questions, it'll send an email to them. So those are some of the other conditional types of things and routing things that you can do within the Power Automate process. But what I still want to show you is, this is still kind of plain Jane. This is very basic. So one of the things that you can do is you can add a nice little header on this. You can put a logo in, and if you guys brought one, it's fine. If not, that's fine. But if you click in this empty space down here, this big old white empty area, if you put the cursor over this middle circle, it'll look like two arrows going up and down. Once you do that, if you click and hold the left mouse button, you can drag that down and make this thing a little bit more compacted and give you a little bit more white space at the top. So now I have a little white space at the top, a little white space at the bottom. So now it's a little bit more even here. So now also what I can do is I can now fill in the background. So again, I have this background selected. It doesn't see it, but over on the left, you'll see how it has selected form screen 1. So if I click on this here, I now have my properties on this side. And now I can add a background color that'll color the entire background of this thing. So now everywhere where there's white space, it's just going to give me a background. And you can add a background image that'll span the whole background. But what we're going to do in this case is we're just going to put a little logo up in the upper left-hand corner, and as well as a title. Like, what the heck is this thing? I click on new, this really doesn't tell me anything. So in here, we're going to go to the insert. So up in the upper left-hand corner where we were at the file, we'll click on insert. And no, that's not it. Media. So the insert tab, the media drop down, and then image. I'll give everybody a second to get here. But if you click on the insert tab, then media and image, it'll then pop up a box on your Power App form that just looks like an empty box now. Okay, so I want this to be an image. Well, you kind of have to tell it what image that you want to use. So with that selected, you'll now see that the properties on the right-hand side are now fitting for an image field, because right now the image says none. Well, I click on none in that image dropdown, and I say add an image file, because right now there aren't any out there. You can preload a lot of these, and I can just say add an image file, and I'm just going to go to my own little repertoire of images, and I'm just going to pick an Avenir one. Let's go back to here. I only have one there. No, we don't pick that one. So I'll just pick this guy for now. So it's just a small icon image. Actually, this one is. And I say open. Well, so now and this is let me see if I can find a better one here than that. The media drop down, and then image. I'll give everybody a second to get here. But if you click on the insert tab, then media and image, it'll then pop up a box on your Power App form that just looks like an empty box now. Okay, so I want this to be an image. Well, you kind of have to tell it what image that you want to use. So with that selected, you'll now see that the properties on the right-hand side are now fitting for an image field, because right now the image says none. Well, I click on none in that image dropdown, and I say add an image file, because right now there aren't any out there. You can preload a lot of these, and I can just say add an image file, and I'm just going to go to my own little repertoire of images, and I'm just going to pick an Avenir one. Let's go back to here. I only have one there. No, we don't pick that one. So I'll just pick this guy for now. So it's just a small icon image. Actually, this one is. And I say open. Well, so now and this is let me see if I can find a better one here. So I'll just pick this guy for now. So it's just a small icon image. Actually, this one is. And I say open. Well, so now and this is let me see if I can find a better one here than that. So now I'll pick this guy. I'll pick this one's better. So it's super small now. So what I can do though is I can take this and I can take the little corner here and start dragging it, and I can make it bigger. And depending on the resolution of your image, you can make this thing as big or as small as you want. So I'm just taking my image, I'm adding it to the form, I'm repositioning it. I want it in this upper left-hand corner here. And now I have a logo on my form. And finally, what I'd like to do on this is I'd like to add some text. What form is this? Yeah, it's great that I have all these fields, but what am I supposed to do? So again, on that same insert, I'm going to select text this time and just a label. So from the insert, text, and then label. And that's going to put it right on top of this one. That's not where I want it. So I click it and drag it and move it around wherever I want this. And this goes back to the formatting and the bolding and the underlining and all the other things that we'd like to do with this. So let's try 19. Let's see how that works. No. Let's try 30. That's better. And we'll make it bold. There. So we have the beginnings of a visitor sign-in form. And again, we can play with these fields. Some of these might be too small for somebody. We can make these bigger. We can change the backgrounds of just these labels here, again, by using the formatting in this right-hand side after you select it. If I scroll down here, you'll see that there's a fill option for the background. I can make these, that probably would be a good color. I can change the colors of the backgrounds of each of these. So just, you can play with the formatting with, based on the colors and whatnot that you have. Yes. Is there a question? Which drop down? So when you're back here and you click on the add column, what did he not create it?
So when I created it, it was with a person column.
Okay.
And then how do I switch to that version in Power Apps? Because I have a few different versions. How do I make that one live or so I can see it?
So did you delete the field from the form and you just need to add it back, or did the?
I deleted it and added it back. Yeah.
Okay. So do you no longer have the person visiting field on your form? Is that what you're missing?
No, I put one on and I made it a person. But now
Okay.
how do I get to that version? How do I make that version the?
Oh, yeah. So to make that the new version, you just have to save it. So back in the file, save, and then publish.
Okay.
So once you do the file, then you do the save, then you hit the publish, then that little box comes up that asks you, are you sure you want to do this? And you hit publish the second time. And then again, it may take a minute or two for it to refresh on the SharePoint site, but once you do that, then that field will be back on the form. Really? That's 102 class.
Got
Are you
it.
good now?
Oh yeah.
Perfect. Wonderful. All right, we have about 13 minutes. I'm willing to stay a little bit extra for anybody that can or want to. If we don't get through everything, if there's any questions, comments, or concerns after the fact, if you guys want to stick around, I'm willing to stick around too. But what I'd like to show you now is, we've done the formatting, we've done the playing with the colors and things like that. That's all well and good. Now, how do we hook up this automation side of things? How do we make this thing, have this notification part of it? So back in the SharePoint side, there's an automate dropdown next to that integrate option. So if I click on automate, honestly, I don't think I want to do it this way. Okay, so we're going to continue using it the same way. So just to make things simple, so we'll go to integrate, and then we'll go to configure flows. Yeah. You don't have Power Automate in there? Okay. So Microsoft just changed something on me since I did this last time. So I'm going to say create a flow. What is this going to do? Yeah, see, so when you hit the create a flow, Microsoft tries to make assumptions based on what it thinks you want to do. So when I hit the integrate create a flow, it's not going to say, send a customized email when a new SharePoint item is added. Huh, imagine that. So or start an approval when a new item is added, which means that it'll go to somebody. So say that this is like the capital expense one. So when a new item is created in this list, it's going to send an approval to somebody and sit there and wait and spin and of course send them an email and wait for them to approve or deny or reject that request and then take the appropriate path. So when you say to create a flow, it's going to try to pick off the most frequently used or the most useful things that it can think of for you to do. In this case, we're going to say send a customized email when a new SharePoint list item is added. So when I click on that, it's going to open up what used to be called Flow. Now it's called Power Automate. And it's going to say, from SharePoint is my source, and then this is what it's going to do. So it's also going to give me what connections that it's going to use. So anybody that runs this process is going to be running as the person that you're creating this as. So this is an important thing to note. You'd probably want to create like a service account. You don't want to use a normal user account because if that user wins the lottery and they leave, guess what? Their Power Automate could be rendered useless if they leave and then the user is eventually disabled after whatever period of time. So using service accounts is a good thing to do in this case. So again, from that one, I click the integrate, Power Automate, create a flow. I selected the send a customized email when a new SharePoint list item is added. And then I click the create a flow at the bottom. Now it's going to build a lot of the scaffolding and a lot of the information that could have potentially been done manually, but we'll see how this runs. This isn't how I did it in that walkthrough. In the walkthrough, I actually did this manually just because that's how I work. I like to make sure that everything is exactly the way I want. But in this case, it automatically created this. Now I'm on the landing page, the dashboard of this specific workflow. Now I want to see, now I want to make changes. I want to change the email. I want to change who gets that email. Now I have to edit this. So up in the upper left-hand corner, I have this edit button. So everyone click on that edit button. And this is going to now take you to the place where you can fill out the rest of the information from this scaffold that it has built for us. So each of these is an expanding collapsible section. And this is again going to try to figure out a way to make it easier for you. Hey, Randy, can you mute your line, please?
Sorry.
That's okay. So this is now going to, I have all this information at the ready. And some of this I'm actually not going to need because I don't need to get my own profile because I'm not going to be sending this to myself. I'm going to be sending this to the person that they entered in SharePoint. So I'm going to click on this one and I'm going to remove this one from the list. Actually, I'm not going to because I'm going to show you something else, another feature about Power Automate. You can rearrange these actions within here just by dragging and dropping, kind of like we did the column headings. So you can click and drag these things around. Like if I want this send email to happen first, I can click and drag this up above here. Oh, there's dependencies. So let me remove those dependencies first. In fact, we're going to just remove all of this. So now I click and drag this because this had dependencies based on this action here, which we're not going to need. So now I just have when a new item is created, send an email. And I can delete this one. So I hit the 3 dots next to this get my profile and then delete. And it's going to say, are you sure? Yes, I am. So now I have, again, my scaffold. So, but what I need to do is I need to pull information from this visitor demo list that I had. So I want to get that person visiting. So I want to add dynamic content. Sometimes this will automatically be selected based on how you created the workflow. But in this case, I want to say add dynamic content. And it knows this is an email field. So I automatically know that it's not going to be a date. Or Microsoft is telling me this isn't going to be a date. This isn't going to be a single line of text. This isn't going to be a time. The only thing that can go in here is either manually typing an email address or from the list, it knows that there are 3 possible options. The person who modified it, the person who created it, and the person who's visiting. So all I have to do is click on person visiting email. And now regardless of who I put in that box, who I select from that box, SharePoint is going to be smart enough to say, send this information over to Power Automate. Power Automate is going to be smart enough to say, all right, you picked Doug Punchak. I'm going to go get their email address and plop that into the to field. And if you wanted to, you could also, add additional people to this. So, say that you always wanted a HR account to get this, not just the person visiting, because what if that person is not there that day? you want a secondary person to always get these emails, or like a shared mailbox or something like that. You can add that in here as well. That way both of those people will get that email. And then you have your CC and your BCC also if you expand the advanced options. But we're going to keep things simple. And I'm going to say a new visitor has arrived for you. And in the body of the email, it's again going to give me all the person information, or all the information from that field, from those fields that I had submitted. But now this is the body. World's my oyster. I can put anything I want. This is not just an email address. So I can say person visiting, and then I would find where is it? Your name. There it is. So your name. And then arrived. And you can use the search here too. So I know that arrived is a field, so I can start typing in the search box and it'll automatically filter as well. Sure, we can do company. Person visiting from. Now, remember, it's title now, or it was titled. You guys might still have company on yours, but the original value of that is title. So now I have person visiting, and then it'll give me their name, from, and then the title or the company name. And I can put this on a new line if I wanted to. So that way you could have them all a nice field like this. So now I have the person who is being visited, the subject of it, and then the other information. And then I hit save. Now, once you hit save, it's going to be available and it's going to start running. So now all I'd have to do is test it. So I can say new. I can say Mark's coming to visit. He's from Conditional Solutions. He arrived today. Okay, at noon. And he's visiting my admin account. That way I should get my email. Then I save. Now again, the workflows themselves, they're good. And then here, let me change the name of this too. So I can change the name of this workflow just to make it a little bit, because it's going to give it this very clinical Microsoft name. Visitor notification. And then I'll save it again. So I'm saving, it's saved. Now I have this here. And if I click the back button here, this will take me back to the form. And I see down here in the run history that it ran for 40 milliseconds, and it was a successful running. And now if I go to my email in here, and here's my email that I just got. Oh, not other. Please, not other. And there we go. That's the email that I just received just now at noon with the person visiting, Mark Lacey, company F&I Solutions, date, time arrived, ugly UTC formatted date, which again is a formatting thing that's very easily changed. But this is my email that I just got from them, from that list, or from the entry that I just put into the visitor log. So end to end, we've created the SharePoint list, which is kind of acts as the data repository. We created the Power Apps side of things, which kind of gives that pretty presentation layer to it. And we created the automation layer with the notifications that will send out an email notification whenever somebody arrives and give that person a notification that someone's waiting for them in the lobby. Power BI is the graphing, charting, the pie charts, the graphs, the tables, the more tabular graphic stuff.
How would they have to migrate over first? They'd have to migrate things over to SharePoint.
So the question is, to get started with this, do you have to, well, the question is, what do you have to migrate? You really don't have to migrate anything. This can just be standalone. Oh, okay. And if you already have it in like a repository currently, you're saying, if you're already capturing it, or if this is going to be new information that you're capturing? Okay. So the question is, if you already have data that you're capturing, how do you get that into SharePoint? Well, there's a number of ways, actually, based on where the data is currently being captured. If it's being captured in an Excel spreadsheet, SharePoint has a really nice way of doing a copy and paste from Excel into SharePoint. And again, I'm kind of pulling the curtain back a little bit, but you can use this edit in grid view. As long as your columns are aligned and arranged the same as Excel, you can say edit in grid view, and then you can just click on here and copy from Excel and hit paste, and it'll just blow all of that information right in here. So there's a number of ways that you can do that too. Sometimes they can export to a CSV if you haven't. So the question is, what if it's from like an ERP system or some other data repository? A lot of those have exports, like XML exports, CSV exports, ways to get that data out. Another way that we've done it is we've used scripting. So we would create a script that would go to your ERP system, pull it out into a format that we know, and ingest it into SharePoint. So PowerShell, if you guys are knowledgeable or familiar or have heard of PowerShell, that is probably one of the most versatile tools in a developer's toolbox, because you can connect it with almost literally anything. You can connect to flat files in CSV, you can connect to SharePoint, you can connect to ERP, you can connect to SQL, you can connect to almost literally anything with that. And then you can just pull that into a temporary holding area and then just push it up into any other repository.
What's the name of that?
PowerShell. It's a scripting tool, so that there's coding involved in that. But you know, that's a very versatile one. So browser based. So all of this is browser based. You just have to go to the URL on an iPad or go to the URL on a phone, and you'll have similar. So if you went to dougpunchak.sharepoint.com/site/ whatever your URL is, and type in that user 8, user 11, and log in with that password, which I'll leave those